Hey, it's Drybear. We're continuing our series of covering all the weapons in the First Descendant, and today I want to talk about the best build for most of the non-ultimate machine guns in the game, like Tamer or Line of Blue Mane. Now, this is the full build sheet, the one sheet for the overall build with stat weighting and priority for how you want to build the weapon, and we'll dive into why these choices are here and what they mean. You'll find a link to this down below in the comments and in the description if you want to use as a reference on your second monitor or on your phone or whatever. But there was a lot of testing and theory crafting on how we could bring out the best in these machine guns. And keep in mind that most of these machine guns, aside from maybe just Tamer and Line of Blue Mane, the other three kind of struggle with managing any real stat. To be honest, their time to empty is quite long. Their reload times are quite long, which means that those two stats together means that the overall value for reload time and fire rate can go down. Also, they don't scale particularly well with crit damage or crit percent relative to other weapon styles, and they generally just have a large clip size. So the question is, how do you bring out the best of a machine gun? And the biggest answer, the simplest answer, is in the special mod Mental Focus, as well as Elemental Bonus. Now, if you don't know what Elemental Bonus is in this game, every target that you face is going to be strong or average or weak to a certain element. And generally, the strategy with this goes around being able to use the correct element for a weapon. Now, you can also hard fix these slots using the assign module socket type system to force a slot to be a different type. However, each element has its own socket type, which means you can element lock a weapon, or you can leave slots open, which means that they're going to cost more capacity to slot in those mods, or you can swap in the element in order to have that as part of the bonus for that. Now, some weapons do this exceptionally well, and some weapons kind of do it pretty well, and you can decide whether you want to use the element lock or you want to do the variable element system, where you constantly change all of your modifiers and modules to make it best fit for the situation you're going into. And I usually like to leave the element swap as an option for people, because not everyone wants to constantly check their modules to see if they have the correct element set up for what they're facing. They want to keep figuring it out, make sure they always have the right one, and they remember to do it, because sometimes that can be cumbersome for people. However, for this specific weapon type, I'm going to actually push the people that don't do the element swapping into doing it, because it scales so unbelievably well with these 5 machine guns that it's almost silly to do anything else. You could, if you wanted to, swap out the 2 element modules we'll recommend here for things like weak point, like have aiming and weak point sight, could swap those in, and as long as you're hitting weak point, you'll get close to the same amount of benefit. But I think the machine guns, more than any other weapon in the game, scale best with having high firearm attack combined with the correct element, scaling that up properly to create an absolutely ridiculous combination. So first, let's talk about Mental Focus and why it works pretty much only for these 5 weapons and no other weapon in the entire game. This is a module that when you have it equipped, as long as you are firing, you can stack up a buff that gives you more and more firearm attack. When fully maxed out, this mod will give you 1% per stack and goes up to 150 stacks, which means that a fully maxed out Mental Focus will give you, at max, after firing 150 times, 150% firearm attack. And also keep in mind that when you're doing the elemental swapping for your modules on these scale off of specifically firearm attack, which is important for this build. And it's important to note that this buff is different from the buff that you get from Sharp Precision, which means as long as if you continue to fire, you will get the Sharp Precision buff on that ultimate mod, which is exclusive to this one. Instead, you can actually pepper this a little bit. You'll see my Mental Focus builds up. I can stop for a second or two, I can keep firing, and I will keep getting stacks. Look at the stack timer right next to my head there. So I can get this stacked up all the way. So because it stacks up firearm attack based on how many rounds you have, you need to get to about 60 to 70 rounds to get good value out of the special mod. There are basically only tactical rifles and machine guns that can get to that count and exceed it, which means that you're going to get the most value out of this special mod using machine guns, and because we know that elemental bonuses scale off specifically firearm attack, it's a match made in heaven. Now, I'll put a link down to my weapons spreadsheet as well down below in the description and in the comments that you can look at. But you can also see that there's most of the weapons outside of Albion Cavalry Gun have plenty of rounds to go off from base, and because the Mental Focus module will scale up to 150 stacks, what we want to do is we want to combine firearm attack with fire rate, elemental bonus, and also maximum rounds so that we can get to that maximum bonus and stay there for as long as possible with these weapons. However, we're going to leave Enduring Legacy and Albion Cavalry Gun off this list because both of those are special cases. They have special passives that we'll talk about in a separate video, but machine guns are perfect for this if we can make everything work just right. It also means reaching 150 rounds means we get the maximum firearm attack out of this module, and exceeding that amount, which most of these can do, means that you're going to be using that full value buff all the way until the end of the clip where you lose the buff and start over again. So if you can run exchange, weapon charge, weapon tuning, these two modules will increase your maximum rounds inside the weapon. You can also re-roll rounds per magazine up to 12% on the weapon, and I recommend doing so. Most of the time you can just follow the stat priority on these down in the bottom left of the screen. You can see that this is the priority of stats. Just use that to reference in order to figure out how you're going to re-roll your stats. But in this case, I would try to get rounds per magazine on the reroll for the passive weapon, because it not only gives you more rounds, but it also gives you a longer time of using that buff, which is an overall DPS increase. You can also alternatively run things like general rounds compulsive, and I do recommend doing this. This will give you a 60% increase on the maximum general rounds you can have, so you can more freely use them. But if you really want to min-max it, you can pull that out and just be a lot more careful with the amount of general rounds that you have, and try to slot something in there like weak point sight, or even maybe some more accuracy. You can run Hawkeye, Vibration, Absorption. So that gives us our maximum rounds. We're going to run Firearm Attack, and then we also run Fire Rate up, because not only does Fire Rate allow us to stack the buff faster, but it also gives us a general DPS increase, and we lose 10% Fire Rate with Mental Focus anyway. So that's the core of this. We want to increase the Firearm Attack, we want to increase the maximum rounds, we want to increase the Fire Rate and run Mental Focus and keep it buffed for as long as possible, and then based on the target we're facing, we're going to swap in the elemental bonus that goes best against that. Generally, as a rule of thumb, if you want to remember this, fire counters chill and chill counters fire, so those two are paired together. Electric counters toxic and toxic counters electric, so those two are paired together. So if you know there's an electric boss, run toxic. If you know it's a fire boss, run chill, vice versa. It's very easy to remember that way. But again, for people that don't want to run the constant swapping of modules, though, I advocate for people playing whatever feels good and plays best for them, but in this case, I'm going to push those people that are a little uncomfortable with that idea and try to learn to do it, because it's just so dang good on these weapons specifically. But if you don't want to, you can run Have Aiming, Weak Point. You can even run more accuracy or recoil. I would say Vibration, Absorption, and Hawkeye are for feel good, right? If you feel like you're missing too much or you want that extra recoil, or if you are running something like General Rounds Compulsive, you can also run Special Forces as well to get that movement speed back as a feel good if that's what you want. And then again, if you don't want to run Elemental, you can just run Weak Point as a swap up for that. But because these have the ability to use Mental Focus as one of the only weapons in the game that can, and Mental Focus is so unbelievably strong, it gives you that value over there. So your weapon stats are going to be down here at the bottom left, and then I have the Enhance and Catalyst priority on what the highest bang for the buck that you get for enhancing these and also catalyzing the weapon so you can reduce the cost of them as well. The Mental Focus is used as a benchmark. Then it uses that benchmark for the other modules below it, so you can see how much value you'd get for enhancing and catalyzing those specifically to get value back on the weapon overall. Now, unlike the special rounds, you don't have to constantly keep an eye on it, but just make sure you don't let these stacks drop until your mag is empty. So make sure you're every 1 to 2 seconds you're firing. You even have to pepper a little bit just to keep it going so you can keep that buff active. And again, you also do want to come to weapon readjustment, and for these weapons that you're using that kind of bonus on, I would try to get as much firearm attack as you can, as well as getting the rounds per magazine can be very good. For feel good, you can also do like recoil if you really wanted to, or hip fire accuracy might help you a little bit as well. Picking up firearm attack against Colossus or one of the orders that you're looking for one of the factions. And I would try to stay away from a single element if you're doing the element swapping system, just because you might end up getting stuck with one that doesn't work. And I think Weak Point probably works as another option for that role as well. So that's what we got for the machine guns. Again, I'm going to look at the Albion Cavalry Gun and Enduring Legacy separately, because both those have very specific passives. Albion Cavalry specifically is going to be a fun one because it's just so unique in what it provides and all the conditions that you can do to meet it between your weapon and your build overall. But this is the machine gun's best build. Let me know what we should do next down below, or if you have any thoughts or comments. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.